mic and let's have a sing-song.
So hello, welcome to Riptide. I'm talking to Oli today from Heavy Lungs. How's work been during lockdown?
Yeah, man, it's been all right. It's been obviously pretty weird. I mean, trying to obviously everything got cancelled for the band. So yeah, I mean, we did a few gigs at the beginning of the year. I think sort of till pretty much till everything kind of stopped, like March, whatever. And then since then we've just been writing, really, as much as possible. Okay. We had quite a few periods where we kind of didn't do anything. But generally, we just try to keep writing and trying to evolve whatever we're doing. From the past, really trying to progress. It's quite hard to do that for that long because you start to lose a grasp on what you're actually working for. If you know what I mean? It's still fun and it's still exciting, but you do have days where you start to think like songs start to sound the same, and then you just start to lose track of what you've been doing, and But
you haven't got that end goal really of gigging, have you, at the minute?
Yeah, exactly. And for a while it was like, oh, there could be gigs in November, there could be gigs in December, and obviously that just got blown out of the water, really. But it's been all right there, really, because it's just been a nice time to write stuff and not be like the finished product all the time. Because sometimes the pressure of time means you have to get something done as quick as possible. And sometimes that's good because sometimes you cut the bullshit and that, but sometimes it just means that you regret what you've put out or what you've written or something.
That's the good thing with is you can look back on it, but you can also start to hate it, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because so I wouldn't really say there's anything that we hate or anything like that, but there's certain things that we would wish we kind of had a bit more time on, or kind of rounded off the finishing, dot the I's and all that stuff, I would say.
Yeah, just polished up a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, how's that been with lockdown then? Have you all been sort of recording your own parts and sending them over Dropbox or whatever, or have you, on that brief period where you couldn't meet, did you manage to meet up? And
we did a little bit of that, but I mean, not a huge amount. But luckily our studio is really close to most of us, so whenever we could, we just went in there and it's one of those things. It's like you try to socially distance and stuff, and we kind of can do that, luckily. In our groups and stuff like that, but we're all quite trusting of each other in terms of we know what we're up to and whatever. So we don't worry about someone that's someone's been to a big house party or whatever else. It's not literally just been doing, I was furloughed for 3 months, so I was just tinkering away, writing and fixing guitars up and whatever I could.
Where do you work?
I work for an animation studio.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm a producer. So I do that 5 days a week, So I was off for 3 months, and then I've been working since July anyway. So I mean, I do get quite a lot of time to do stuff as well. But I've been working pretty solid.
Well, did animation come before music? Did you want to take animation as a route, and then music sort of reared its head?
Well, animation was a complete random thing, to be honest, because I'm not an animator myself. I'm I'm essentially assisting the team and all that stuff. But I actually did journalism at uni. I came out of uni, working in a pub for a while and all that, and then I managed to get a graduate job through this kind of scheme that the uni, because I went to uni here. It was a scheme thing they did to help people out. Mm-hmm. And I managed to get a job. It was just happened to be an animation studio, and I was I was doing marketing essentially for the company. Marketing isn't that important certainly for the company we're doing with. It's a part of it, but it's a minor part.
Yeah.
And then that just evolved into being way more involved with the actual projects and stuff. It's enjoyable work, but can be quite time consuming in terms of trying to do the band as well.
Yeah. Any stuff we might have heard of?
definitely things that you might have seen on TV or seen on like adverts or something.
Quite reputable then.
Yeah, some of it's pretty big. In fact, we worked on. It pains me to say it because I'm a Spurs fan, but we did some stuff on Arsenal's away kit launch. Yeah, it's all the like marbly stuff. It's fun to do, but it always kind of reminded me that like fucking hell, it's Arsenal.
That's cool though, like, because I mean we sound pretty similar in the respect that I love punk music and I love football, and that's that's me. So it must be pretty cool to somehow juggle both of them.
Yeah, man. It was cool. It was just like an interesting time to kind of like, because my boss is really into football as well, and like we just kind of kept laughing that he supports Southampton, so it was like this big team and all this stuff, but it was nothing to do with us in a way. I kept thinking, I wish it was Spurs or I wish it was Saints or something.
Well, how did you get to Spurs then? If you're from, is it Bristol?
Well, no, I'm from London originally.
Oh, you're from London. Okay, well, that's
I'm from Enfield, near Tottenham, and then I lived in Devon for a while, and then I moved here to go to uni about 6 years ago.
You just like Bristol, so you just hung around.
Yeah. I mean, I moved to Bristol because I knew people here. Mainly, in fact, it was Idols that I knew.
Yes.
Before I moved here, because I've known them for about 10 years.
Okay, so you were sort of the first person who knew Idols out of the band.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, in terms of years and stuff. Yeah, definitely. I've known them since I was about 17 or something. And they supported my old band and all that, and it's been a long time. And like, so that was a bit of a draw because could see. Basically, I could see before I moved to Bristol. I could see what was going on in terms of there was music going on, and it seemed easier to live in Bristol than it would be to move back to London. So,
who was the previous band?
We were a two-piece band called the Rants.
The Rants.
We didn't really like we geeked quite a bit, but it was all very like Devon-based stuff, and played in London a couple of times, I think, and bits and bobs. But I mean, like, which was just quite young, and then it was a classic case of like the drummer was more into gigs that paid you more money and all that stuff, and so try and do covers, and it was that kind of thing.
You don't want to be stuck doing covers.
No, exactly. Like to me, it was just never my thought to ever want to be in a cover band. It was a case of you do a few covers because that kind of draws people in.
Yeah.
But I used to kind of take the piss with it, and I'd be like, yeah, we'll do covers, but I'd do covers by like, I mean, at the time, the Black Keys, for instance, were not that big.
Yeah.
Not like they are now, and we used to cover their songs, and people just think they're us.
You'll say that.
Yeah. So I got out of that. I moved to Bristol, and then I moved to Bristol expecting to be in a band straight away, and I wasn't in a band until the end of uni. That's when Heavy Lungs.
So speaking of Heavy Lungs, what's the personally? Because I think your guitar, especially in punk, some of your riffs, especially on like Pacemaker, for example, are quite different. So did you sort of be like other punk bands for that, or did you take from other stuff?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I listen to quite a lot of punk stuff and have spells of listening to it all the time and everything else. But generally, it's not punk isn't. I wouldn't say it's my bread and butter. My first kind of things I got into myself, because obviously everyone's got music their parents show them and their sister shows them or whatever. Yeah. But the first thing I ever really got into myself was Iggy Pop and the Stooges. And so that's my original punk thing, I think. Yeah. And then my brother would I remember bringing back the Sex Pistols album and all that stuff, and this and that, whatever. But then it was more like grunge and then like Blur was my favorite band. Oh, still is my favorite band, really.
Grew up in a perfect time for grunge, didn't you?
Yeah, it definitely is, like, because my sister's 16 years older than me, so I grew up like Smashing Pumpkins playing and like MTV on all the time and all that. It was around a lot, and she was into Oasis and Blur, so there was never any kind of never had any competitive thing of that. Just into everything, really. And I think it was just like a lot of time it's just a kind of, I get very drawn to like things that sound very big and like kind of, so like a lot of the time the punk thing to me, what I take from it is not necessarily exactly how it sounds. It's more the attitude and the kind of the free spiritness of it, rather than like, you know, because there's plenty of punk albums and songs and stuff that I love that sound shit in terms of, you know, sonics and whatever else.
It's just how fast.
Yeah, exactly. Like the energy and stuff like that. What a song makes you feel like when you're riding your bike down a massive hill or something like that, or driving your car on the motorway or whatever. That you know, that doesn't come into like how a song sounds. That's a feeling.
Yeah.
So it's just feeling that comes from those things for me. But like, songs like Pacemaker and stuff. I mean, that comes from Graham Coxon, Blur, really.
Okay.
That's those kind of shapes. That's the same. The chord shape is the same as the shape for Coffee and TV.
Is it?
Yeah.
As you probably see, the bass. I make music as well, and I tend to just go, right, what song do I like at the minute? Okay, let's look at the tab. So take the notes, rearrange it a bit.
Yeah. Definitely.
Was that just a one-off for Pacemaker?
That was that's just a case of what I've always tried to do is like all the little quirky, cool things that lots of people I like do. You know, their signature things and stuff like that, or things that I try and pick them up and just keep them in the back burner and stuff, and then just use them now and again, that kind of thing, and try and make it not sound like I've ripped it off too much. But sometimes it's too obvious. But, you know.
Well, I just want to bring it back because you mentioned Iggy Pop being one of your first inspirations in punk, and how was it to be played by Iggy Pop? Can't say his name. Iggy Pop on the radio.
Yeah, that was actually crazy, really. That that I got it was a weird way I found out, because I wasn't listening to the radio, I was watching TV or something, and an old uni lecturer of mine texted me, who I hadn't spoken to for a while, just saying, "Oh, congrats! Oh, I just heard you on the radio. Nice one. You know, let's go for a coffee soon." And I was like, "Oh, right." And then I checked who was on the radio on Six Music, and it was Iggy Pop, and I was like, "What the fuck?" So obviously, you know, like our band group chat sort of blew up, and we were talking about it and stuff. So I was trying to find I managed to rewind, find the clip, listen back to it, and I was like, yeah, it blew my mind. But absolutely, his voice saying, you know, that he's listening to Heavy Lungs was pretty insane.
That you grew up idolizing, saying your name. That's
yeah. And then he played it again on the same show, which was real. Yeah.
So not like it enough to play it. He must have really liked it.
Well, yeah, he played. I think he played Birthday and he played Roy. So to me, that just strikes me as like he's obviously chosen those songs out of a bunch rather than like.
Yeah, he hasn't been given them.
Yeah, well, I like to think so. I like to think he's just sitting by the pool in Miami, like in his trunks, just listening to music.
Just blaring away. Blaring away Measure.
Yeah.
Well, on the note of Measure, how's the response been to that? Because obviously it came out last year while the world was still normal. But do you think people might have found that because of COVID, you know, being stuck inside trying to find new music?
Yeah, I think so, actually, because it does surprise me sometimes the amount that, like, you know, we haven't really done anything for quite a long time, publicly or anything. And it still surprises me that, you know, as much as Instagram is not the being and end all, you know, you get things trickle through, you know, you get followers like daily and all that stuff. Or like people tagging us saying, oh, they listen to us, or, you know, that kind of thing. And it's kind of surreal, really. And we have had a few messages and people saying they're listening to us in lockdown, or they're, you know, or they just found us, or like whatever else. So it's pretty cool, really. Like somehow it does just keep, let's say, momentum really at the moment.
Yeah, just keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, exactly. And I like to think that, like, that, you know, whatever we do next will be seen with even more enthusiasm. So it's quite exciting for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the next music that you said you've been writing already, what would I know? When you write music, you obviously think it's the best you can be, but do you think it's on a level with what you've done before, or do you think you're taking it a bit further?
I think we're taking it further because we've thought about it more. So we've thought about the way that each song like fits together, how it could be an album together, or like, you know, how many, like just keeping like a thematic thread through all of it, really.
Less of a bunch of songs together and more of a story.
Sort of, but we don't really know what the story is. That's the point. So it's more just like, okay, we want this song to sound kind of like robotic, or like a couple of our tracks, are like really heavily hip hop influenced. To the point of, like, they're very heavily influenced by hip hop, but I wouldn't necessarily think it's like us like making new metal tracks or something. Yeah. But it's influenced by the way that, like, the way it's written, and like the way that it sounds like it's edited instead of produced, if you know what I mean. You know, like how a slightly more digital or electronic kind of hip hop track might be cut up more like extremely. So it's more like, but like sometimes it's things like that, or sometimes it's things like it, you know, like we have written like a really classic punk track, but just like really as classic as you could imagine.
That's what you like to hear.
Because it's just like fun to have that amongst all this other stuff that's a little bit more left field, you know.
Yeah. Where does the more hip hop influence come from then? Do you do vocals first and then sort of write around that?
It's a mixture, really, but sometimes it just comes from like beats and like we all listen to quite a lot of hip hop and stuff, and listen to all sorts of stuff. I think Danny especially, really. But like, I think like one of the tracks I was listening to, I think I was listening to Danny Brown or something like that, and there's actually quite a lot of grime influence, because that's to me for the last few years has been some of the most exciting stuff, especially in the UK.
Yeah,
because it feels really British, and like I don't really know what it is to be like patriotic these days. Seems like a very kind of strange thing to do, but like when you see something that seems specifically British but it makes you feel good about it, I think that's something to celebrate. Do you know what I mean?
Be proud of. Yeah
exactly. It's not like it's like flying Union Jacks and like screaming about, you know,
fighting isn't with you.
Exactly, yeah. But whereas, like, you know, like for instance, like Kano's album from last year is one of my favourite albums of the last, I don't know how many years, because it's just so interesting, and so like the way it's made is just amazing, and the song content, everything else, it's just really cool. And it's like no one else, you couldn't ever imagine that being American or being like from anywhere else, which is quite a cool thing. Like no matter what, like doesn't really matter that it is British, but it's just quite nice to have that stamped on your thing. Like whether it's because, you know, like sometimes the idea of like things being so American kind of I you know, I wouldn't no problem with it, but like at the same time I'm like, well, I am English, you know. I am, you know, I was born here, so, and everything I've grown up knowing is here.
Yeah.
So why not
embrace it?
Exactly. Yeah. Like, you know, there's always something. I feel like wherever you're from, there's always something you think is shit about it. But there's also something. There's also a reason that most people, you know, don't just leave. They don't just. You know, you kind of stay for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah. I think for people like me who listen to more rock music at the minute as well, you can look at the rock scene right now and go that there is a real identity to UK rock, isn't there? Because you know, the spoken vocals, bands like you, Idols, Fontaines, you know, that sort of thing. You don't get that in America. So I think this is the thing sort of driving the UK scene at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that goes. that goes hand in hand with that thing of like, you know, people like Kano or people like, I mean, yeah, even people like Stormzy and stuff on the other level of it, you know, it's like it goes part and parcel because it's like just celebrating who you are and not like this idea of like a almost like the Hollywood version of whatever you could be. Do you know what I mean? That was all done before, you know, that idea of like Americanizing everything. In the 2000s, wasn't it? Like in the 90s, it was quite celebrated to be quite British and stuff with Britpop and whatever. And then it all kind of went a bit weird for a bit, and I feel like it's coming back a bit, but it's coming back with more of an edge of like, it's just a bit angrier and got a bit more cynicism, which is quite a British thing anyway, isn't it?
I guess you could take the current. I don't know. I hate to bring up the current climate, making people angry, making more music. But I think, you know, if you think 20 years ago, when new metal popped up, it's because it was that thing with passion. And then when hip hop and grime came around, it's because there was that passion. Yeah. So I think that's definitely a big piece of it.
Yeah, you're right. It's definitely like there's a reason it's around, that kind of thing. I mean, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because like sometimes I wonder why we get like compared or lumped in with lots of bands. You know, like for instance, I think they're really great, but like Fontaines, I don't see any similarity between us, other than sometimes I feel like that passionate vocal and passionate frontman thing. That I get that, and that's cool. Like I'm happy for that to be the link, as opposed to like, oh yeah, their guitars or everything else sounds the same, because to sound similar in like a passionate way of like projecting your message, that's cool, you know. Same as that's why you know, it's why idols, why they deliver the message so well to people and they communicate it well, is because it's just quite easy to know what they're going on about, you know. Yeah,
it's so hard to pigeonhole music these days, isn't it? You can't give it a genre. Like we refer to you, like we mentioned Fontaines and Idols was all as punk, but then, you know, for the elitists, you'd have to try and sort of break it down into different styles of punk. But there's no point.
Yeah. I just like to think of things as more like, and it sounds a bit bougie, but like I feel like your band can be a mixtape now. Do you know what I mean? It can be like playlist. Can be playlists are more popular than albums these days, anyway. Really, because the song is the most important thing. So, like, you know, to be like pigeonholed as like post punk or something like that doesn't really do any good, it doesn't do anyone any good, because then you might alienate someone else who might be interested, but they just think, oh, they're a post-punk band, I'm not really into that. But it's like, well, yeah, but there's another 5 songs or there's another 6 songs on an album that are not that, or they're just like, you know. And I think like that's our writing recently has been a little bit in that realm of just like, why not just make this different thing where it's a little bit more like for instance, the new Gorillaz album that they've done, like the song tune thing, like that's like a playlist more than an album, and it's sick, works really well, and they're like the play, but it's like a perfectly curated playlist, so everything has got a similarity, but it goes all in different directions, because
you've got Slade on it, but you've also got Elton John.
You
would never have thought they'd be on the same record.
Exactly. And it's just cool. Like I can't imagine that being like. Can I imagine that being like a problem? You know what I mean? Just like a cool like way to make something new. Because at the end of the day, we've got to keep pushing the envelope as musicians in this country or whatever, because you can't just keep flogging the same idea of like, you know, it's the same as like that's the thing. Sometimes that is the problem with like the idea of punk and stuff like that. It's like, I get it and I enjoy it and all that, but at the same time I'm like, I do worry sometimes about the nostalgia of it. It's like,
it can get sort of burnt out.
Almost need a new name for it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a new genre with a name or something.
Thinking more about playlists and shorter listens these days. So your new music, are you writing with the intention to make an album, or are you still going to write another EP? If it's like an attention span thing these days, isn't it? People don't listen to albums.
Yeah, it's tricky because as from a standpoint of like what's better for us in terms of to get plays and stuff like that, we kind of need to make an album. Because putting an EP out doesn't really, I mean, it's done us quite well, but I'm not sure if another EP would do enough.
No. I mean, done you well. I've got it on vinyl.
Nice. I don't think I've actually got one myself.
Okay.
But like, yeah, I mean, I think we will try and do an album, but we'll just try and do it our own way.
Yeah.
I think that would be the thing.
I don't know about you, but I find I tend to look at bands and go, yeah, you're a great band, and yes, you make great music, but there's something about releasing an album that just stamps that you are a band. Because that's how it's always been, isn't it? You've got
exactly.
A band.
It's always the dream, really. I mean, I've personally never put out an album, but like George, our drummer, he has, and whatever else. So like, but he's still like, it's still, no matter what, it's still like our goal to have that done, because there's always stepping stones, isn't there, and milestones in terms of like a musical career. And having an album out is definitely a very, very important. I think like to never have an album out but to keep going seems like impossible, really. So yeah, but I just think it'd be nice to do it in a way that's like, I don't know, like we've done something different, or like we've done, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, like when I saw that Song Machine thing, the Gorillaz thing, I was just like, that's so genius, because they compared it to like Damon Albarn was saying, like they compared it to like Netflix and it being like episodal. Obviously, they've got their visual element and stuff like that as well, but it's genius because it's like that's what people consume at the moment. It's strange that like like as much as the music industry, people go on about the music industry dying and all that stuff. It's like, well, adapt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying adapt as in like, sack off your job and get a job in cyber, but like, adapt to the situation by making something different.
Yeah, just have fun.
People have them this year. That's the thing. Like the idea of all these live streams and stuff. If you think about that last year, no one would have given a shit. Not really.
It's been good and bad for music, because we've had more people to make more time to make more music and release more music. Yeah. But like, what do you think? I think it might have saturated it all a bit. That there's so much now.
Yeah, well, it has a little bit. And I was talking to someone about this before. It's like the idea of like a virtual gig is kind of fine, but when it's the only option, so you can do, it's boring. It gets to a point where it's a bit like, yeah, cool, I'm just going to sit on the sofa and, and also, because it's not like you can get all your mates around and all watch it together and have a beer. It's like, so you've kind of basically got to watch it in this kind of very like private manner, which isn't what a gig is like. So
no, especially in this kind of music. Well, it's all about the energy. It's about the passion. Because I think the atmosphere in a room when rock music is being played, you don't find that anywhere else. And I think that's what lots of people have been missing.
Yeah, because it's funny, really. Because I mean, I've been a fan of like KXP live videos for like years, and I always wanted to do one, and I still do. But like, I always wanted to do one, and I always just thought it was the coolest thing. And obviously, we did a similar thing in London with Idols. So we did a sort of KXP, but not like the proper thing in the studio, all that stuff. And then it made me realise this year, and I was like, it's not really as exciting as I always thought it was. you know, like watching them, they start to get a little bit. But it's
Yeah.
just purely because that's the only option. Like, I'm sure once we can start going to gigs back again, my love for those shows will come straight back because they're, you know, they're great. But yeah, having that option to just sit on the sofa, buy a ticket. I mean, like, I've watched a few. I didn't go to any sit down gigs. Did you go to any of those? See, none of those. The only thing I was ever tempted was I can't remember who it was now, but it was something that was like would have been sitting down anyway, and I thought, well, that's fine, but I don't want to go and see like a metal band while
Well,
sitting having a pizza or something. Do you know what I mean?
I've got tickets to go and. Have you heard of Foxjaw?
Yeah.
I've got tickets to go see them in Birmingham in February.
Okay.
But I'll be seated or something.
Right.
Sit there,
I think like, yeah, I'm sure it can be done, but just the appeal to me isn't there so much. Like, I reckon there's probably been some amazing gigs sitting down like that, but I just don't. I see it advertised and I don't jump on it because I'm like,
yeah. Wait till the real thing's back.
Exactly. Like, it's one of those things. It's like when the pubs got reopened, but then you had to like queue up and you had to do everything else. It's like, it's not really that.
Not the same.
Like, you know, I've been to the pub a few times, whatever else. But really, part of me just thinks it'd just be better to wait because you don't. You know what I mean?
Save money. Right. Yeah. Well, on that note, we've got 3 minutes left of the Zoom call because I'm cheap and don't want to pay for it. So one last question, which I'm going to try and end every interview with, is, especially since you've had more time to listen to music lately, what is one band, a smaller band, that you would try and open our listeners up to and get them listening to?
Small band. So a friend of ours, a guy called Jack, he's in a band called Icehead.
Okay.
Yeah, they've got a couple songs out. They might have an EP out now, but they're fucking great. Yeah, they had a new video out coming the other day for a song called Memory, and it's like, it's a bit like, well, I describe it, but like but they got to, like, Jack sings and so does the other guy. They have a guitar player or something.
Yeah.
So they've got this like double voicing going on. It reminds me a little bit like Whitney sometimes. Do you know about Whitney? A little bit like that. It's like they're like American kind of folk-ish band, but kind of got more grooves and like some more kind of thing to it. But then there's also kind of, like I said, they've got a couple of like slightly heavier tracks and stuff. It's cool.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Well, we'll make sure everyone checks them out then.
Absolutely, man.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining me. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, especially the first interview. So thank you. Hopefully I'll speak to you again in the future at some point.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you take it easy.
Yeah, and you.
All right, man. Cheers.